everyone. Autumn here. I'm so excited. It is time to teach a creative workshop, Abundant Abstracts. I love abstract art because I believe it's the most expansive of all art. There's less parameters, there's less limitations, there's more accessing your own creativity and intuition. So I probably incorporate abstract art into 90% of what my son and I do. That way there's just more freedom for his body to kind of create in the way that it can, and nothing is ever wrong, because we don't want to discourage artists. We want to encourage and really provide these spaces that are wide and open to practice and to see what feels good when you're creating, right? Some people who begin with abstract art become more fine-tuned in a certain style or medium, but they have to begin first with this really open, wide canvas of possibility. So in case you're a beginning artist, or maybe you thought like, I don't do art, I don't have any creativity, I want to suggest that you do, and you've just forgotten, because a lot of times in society and some of the situations we've been in, like if we've been through school and family structures, we can kind of lose that touch of our creativity. But young children are usually really tapped in, and you'll see this. So let them be an example to you, and let them remind you that your creativity is still there inside you. So I hope this session can really revive some of that courage within you, that you can be an artist, you can be creative, and you can be proud of your creations. All right, so there's 4 different abstract art techniques I want to teach. The first is very basic. It is either a sponge or a brush design. I am using acrylic paint. You could use tempera or washable paint. I like to water down my acrylics a little bit because they can be kind of thick. So you have that option too with acrylic. And just be mindful of the age or, fine motor ability that you're working with, because acrylic will stain clothing. So remember that. And I've got this blank canvas panel ready to go here. I want to show a few different techniques, but you could choose on yours just to do one of these that feels most aligned. So here's a few ideas. We can make horizontal lines. Oh, I have to show you. This was my son's idea of a square design. So you see it's got the perpendicular lines, it's got the horizontal and the vertical, but they're not in any kind of shape, fashion, organization. They're more abstract. So the idea is you could do lines, you could do it like a square, or you could do it all vertical or all horizontal, and just, they're going to have some freedom to them. They're not going to be like a designed pattern that has to follow rigidly. Let's say that word, rigidly. There's more expansive freedom. So some of your lines might end sooner than others, or so. So I will show that technique, as well as a segment technique where you're just kind of combining colors and going any which direction. So let's begin with a few colors. I'm going to go for whatever my intuition just calls to me. So if you're creating with me or watching this workshop after it's been created, I want you to tune into the colors that speak to you. And this is a lot about just expression. I would call this kind of craft a celebrate craft. We're celebrating who we are and how we can express our creativity in this world. And remembering that your creativity is needed, and you are needed just as you are in this world. So I'm going to go with a blue, orange, and a yellow to begin with. And let's do the line technique. I'm going to make my lines vertical. So here I go. Here's some orange. And you can rinse or between brushes, or you can kind of do what I'm doing so they blend a little bit. So let's make sure you can see. I might change this so you can see a little bit more. I'm just really, I'm going to do a different brush, I think, for the blue. I'm just really making these lines to fill in the white and the waves that I feel look good. And with abstracts, you'll have some blending. So here I got some green going on now with the blue and the yellow. And that's the idea too. You don't always know what you're going to get. And you want to leave your art project open to that evolution process. That's one thing I love about abstract. You're giving that permission for it to take a life of its own. I'm going to go ahead and make some bigger things so you can see them a little better here. So really, there's no rhyme or reason to my lines. They're just kind of filling in here. And if you create a project such as this one, it's going to become an abstract background. So you can add a positive quote that you either create yourself or you find off the internet, right? Just give the person credit if it's a quote that's circulating. But you can also make your own up. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this design. I want to give you a lot of ideas during this workshop. So I'm not going to spend too much time on each design. But you'll get the idea. All right. So here's an example of just a vertical line design, right? I got 3 different colors going on. You could use more colors. You could choose less. You know, at least 2 colors, right? And you could create that across an entire canvas. Or maybe your colors change as they go across the canvas, right? You've got this freedom to create it however you want. I'm going to rinse my brush. And now I want to show you a sponge technique which for beginning artists, especially young children, sponges are awesome. And I have 3 different types I want to show you. This is your old-fashioned kitchen sponge. An old one just cut up. They make great little stampers. This is an actual sponge I bought, and so is this one. This has more of a point on it, and this is more rounded. So let's just stick with these colors since I have them. And the next area I'm going to show is how you might just creatively sponge colors on. Of course, this isn't the best tray for a sponge, so I actually bought this for sponges. This is better, something flat, when you're sponging colors. There we go. All right, so the cool thing about sponges is they're not going to all be the same texture and depth. So as you see here, there's some are lighter, some are darker. And I do have different sponges for the different colors, but you can also blend them, right? That's the fun part of abstracts. And acrylics are great blending paints. So right over top here, I'm putting some of the yellow, and I'm going to keep this little space in between so you can see the difference of this abstract design. And now I'm going to take the smaller one and add blue in different ways. And a little kind of design with the blue is coming through. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that. Okay, and so whatever you want with an abstract, you kind of tune in to what feels good. So, sponging. And here's another thought. I didn't put this on the list, but Q-tips. They make little fine spongers. So let's add another color. Let's add some purple. And I'm just going to use, lift this up closer so you can see I'm just going to use a Q-tip to make abstract little dots. These could be an accent on top of things, or they could be an entire project, like pointillism, the old-fashioned technique, where you're literally just one by one filling in the space. So that is definitely a simple sponge kind of technique using a Q-tip. So I'll show that little design there. You can see. And of course that could be all colorful, all different ways. You can have it in arcs, you can make it in patterns. It's still abstract, but abstract can take a form. And that's the cool thing too. It doesn't have to always look completely messy. But the idea is it can, and that's perfectly fine. So I also think, like, when you're creating this kind of artwork, the mindfulness behind it is that life can be unpredictable and a little chaotic at times, but it's still beautiful. Like, it's okay for life to take on those forms. So I really like that for the abstract idea. And let's see. Now we could also let's do some different colors, and we'll do kind of segments with a brush. I'm going to take a brush, a little bit of water, where I might just go across larger segments of different colors. Kind of feel like doing arcs here. And then bring in the other colors. A little bit of blending here. So when it comes to the abstract art, maybe the colors are speaking to you and you want more of the calming colors like blues and purples to kind of calm the chaos of your life. So definitely pull in the frequency of color to assist you in your practice. So here's some blending going on. Nothing that I've planned, just kind of seeing where it might go. That was a lot of the colors mixed together there. You can explore with that, or definitely rinse your brush in between. I like to have several brushes available so I can kind of go quicker. All right, so I will finish these more later to post in the group for time restraints, but I want to show you just how things evolve. Okay, here's just how the art project evolves there. All right, so this is the sponge or the brush design. If you have a neurodivergent student, you can help them hold the brush or get started, dip the paint, pour the paint, pick the colors, pick the design if they want a parameter like the lines or just more freestyle. And the idea is it's going to create a background that you can add a positive phrase to. You know, and some of these things could stand on their own too. I mean, if you had a shape, if it wasn't a square, say it was a heart or a star, and you did an abstract design on it, it could just stand on its own. So don't feel like you have to add a quote. That's just one idea. All right, so we're going to move on to the second idea, which means I put away paint for a little while because this idea is a collage. Collages are fun because not everyone likes paint. And for some people, paint can be a little overwhelming or sensory enticing. So maybe you're a person or you love a person who needs something more non-liquid, right? This is a solid we're dealing with here. So I want to show you an example first, and then we'll talk about it. So, I call this the newspaper and colored paper collage. I basically chose newspaper, orange, and yellow, and I made this background, and I put a quote on, kind of with the idea that newspaper and the words represent stories or experiences of our life. So it says, when I allow the painful stories of my past to burn, only the refined lessons remain. And I created that quote. So I used like the colors of the fire as the colors I chose, and I just used a mixture of clear glue. You could also use white glue, but clear glue and water to apply each piece. And we're going to apply them randomly too. So as you start these projects, there's, a lot more freedom. You don't know exactly where. You have to choose when and where you're going to add that piece. So let's get my solution first. I like to do a 2-to-1. So I kind of eye it up, but whatever I pour in here, I'm going to take about half of that as water to mix. Okay, and I want a brush that does not have paint on it or is clean of paint. That would be very important because we want this to be a clear application. And this is fun because it involves a ripping technique. So this is something you can teach your children or loved ones. And as you rip stuff, you never quite know how it's going to look, right? It kind of, you're giving that permission to the paper to do its own thing. So I thought I would begin with the newspaper. This is how I began the other one. And I did add a newspaper and then color paper, and then went back and added a little bit of more. You kind of fine tune it. So I'm not going to create the whole thing in the next 13 minutes or so, but I'm going to create part of it. So really, let's just rip our paper up, and you can choose the size of the design. I'm going to go a little bigger here for time restraints, but if you wanted smaller pieces, you could totally do that too. So now that I got my pieces, we're basically going to coat underneath with paint and over top. Not paint, with glue. So you can watch this here with a little bit of paint in there. And I'm just painting it on. And the idea is, this is kind of random choices. And maybe our newspaper is different. Mine had a lot of ads in it, so I guess it could kind of correspond to the things we used to value and kind of shifting beyond those values. And since my son and I like to spend time in nature, I'm going to use earth colors as the secondary colors to kind of hold in the energy of the stories. Because we can imagine that we release our stories to the earth. And we close chapters in our life and we begin new stories, right? So I do have a little bit of color on this brush, but it's not going to hurt anything. I'll get these down. All right, so I basically just glued some newspaper down randomly, and now I'm going to use these earth colors, green, blue, and brown. Very similar fashion. I'm just ripping. And the idea is you're filling in the space, right? How can you creatively fill in the space of the white? And as I was creating the other one, I tried to bring some balance into it, but it's abstract, so you don't have to. So, same way, you're just going to underneath and on top And you want to overlap in some areas because you're going to eventually need to overlap. So overlapping is perfectly fine. You could also do different kind of elements. Like if you're more into air, you could do purple and pink or white background colors, kind of imagining releasing your stories to the air, to be carried on the wind. So see, even the colors you use can have a meaning and work together. That's what I love about art. It can be so purposeful and meaningful. So as you're doing a project like this, your intention is to expand beyond your past. You want to honor it and the stories and experiences, but you don't want to be controlled by them anymore. You want to be able to create anew. So that would be the idea. And then you would pick a quote that would support that idea. Or help your child pick a quote to support that for their life. Branching out, new experiences. All right, I might need some more glue. So here's the beginning of it. And I would just continue to add newspaper and continue to add blue. You might need more glue. And it can be really fun and really like a sensory relief to rip paper. So say you have a child that could use some regulation. You could actually set them up to rip some paper that you're going to use for a project eventually. And just have them put it in a container after they rip it up. Be like, here's the yes. Here's all the stuff you can rip. I know some families have had autistic kids that like to rip books and things. And so there's some things you might not want ripped up in your house. So find the things that they can rip that might serve a purpose of creation. And allow them to rip in that capacity. It can be very satisfying. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how I'm going to add a little bit more newspaper. And we won't spend too much time on this one, but the idea is newspaper and maybe 2 or 3 colors. And we'll get some overlapping going on so you can see how that looks. I don't really like this big white part of the newspaper, but I laid it down, so guess what? What do you call it? Happy little accidents or something you can go back and cover up or fix, whatever you want. It's up to you. If something needs to be changed, then I'm going to go ahead and cover part of it up. Then I feel more satisfied with my work. So you have that freedom with your artwork to make it fit exactly the way you want it to look. Not everything in life provides that permission to us. So we want to practice it in the ways that really empower us and our children. All right. I think we're going to finish up with this one and move on to the next art. So here's what I got so far. I'll continue to add in and complete this, and it'll be a background that honors the past. This would be more like an honor craft from our studio. So we have celebrate, honor, and connect crafts. So we're honoring the past experiences while recognizing we want to move on to a new chapter. So I'll have to think of a quote that will go well with releasing the past when it comes to Mother Earth, and that'll be exciting. All right, let's move on. Keep on rolling here. I am going to still need glue because the next one is another collage, but I call this a more eclectic collage. So this one will be including paint and ripped paper, but also little things we create by hand with colored pencil. So this is where the colored pencils come in. So we're going to go ahead and do that first, because this project, probably my favorite here, is called Love Holds Us Together. All right, so if you have the white paper, white printer paper is what you would need right now. And I printed off some ideas of hearts or love images that you could use as a reference. You could also print them off and cut them out to add on to your artwork. There's nothing wrong with that. Or your child could color in these and then you're going to add them on. So here's just some heart images. One's like a flower, one's with squiggly. Here's different things. I'm just going to use it like a reference. Let's see, I hold that up right. As a reference to create some. So I'm just going to begin. I'm just going to make like 5 different hearts with different colors. So my first one is going to be like the squiggle that they show. Just following that a little bit. Okay. So you can see my heart in this colored pencil. You could use marker too, but the good thing about colored pencil is it won't bleed when we use the glue. So there's one. I kind of do like the hearts flowering, so I'm going to make one like that. And this is where you can practice your doodling skills. Your doodling hearts. Okay, so here's my next one. And now I'm going to make a heart that has some little ruffles around it. I did this a little backwards. You actually want to rip, you're going to want to rip these out. So I don't want to hurt the images. I'm going to go ahead and rip them out now. But if you could rip your paper into 5 before you begin, that would be a little easier because you'll ensure that you won't rip through. But art is often forgiving, so I was able to get them out of there. All right, another heart. I'm going to make 2 hearts kind of together. I'm going to color these in. So even the symbol of a heart has infinite ways you could create it. And I want you to see that. We're sticking with one symbol, but we're making it in lots of different ways. So there's my 5th one. And let me look at my chart here and see what other ones might draw to me. Maybe a striped one. There's one that's in a circle. Let's do that with green. So a circle with a heart in the center and stripes in the background. And maybe this one has a blue heart in the center. You can do some different shading with different blues or different colors. You could get creative. So this craft is going to involve a little bit of your doodling in it. And I am going to rip because I still want that layered look, but I might not want all these edges. So if you want to rip off anything that has edges to make them kind of smaller, we'll also layer. So don't feel like you have to rip off every single edge. All right, so now I have my hearts. I can put my colored pencils away. I'm going to pick 2 colors to go with this. I'm going to do a purple and a red just to show different colors in action. And I'm also going to use paint. So this is very eclectic of a piece. It is going to have different mediums. So the first thing we're going to do is paint. So let's see here. I'm going to have to rinse some of my stuff. going to use this red paint. I have a lot of it from before. And maybe we'll just stick with red and purple because that is kind of the colors of the paper. So abstract can also have some order. So I'm going to actually just go on here and create some paint designs kind of randomly. And this is a connect craft, meaning that different people could take different roles. So one person could be the sponger, one could be the doodler. Maybe you're the parent and you have better doodling skills, so you're going to take that role, and your child is going to do the sponging role. Okay, so a connect craft is one that utilizes everyone's help. It's like a joint activity. You make decisions together and you create it together. It's great for a family night or couples night, right? Even. And I'll show you when we get to, we're going to actually keep the words on the outer edge, because this could be something that pictures are added to. Making a background, so instead of a quote, you're going to put some pictures of adventures or sharing experiences together. And you can also just add acrylic directly to your canvas. I like to do that sometimes. All right. We're doing good on time. I'm going to always check that. So let's say that's my painting, the parts that I'm going to paint. You could let it dry for a little bit, but as long as you've got baby wipes or ways to clean, you'll be fine to carry on. The next step is the paper. So just like the other one we did, the collage, you're just going to rip your paper. Make it in areas that you can add. And then I'll do some red. This is actually origami paper. It's a little bit easier to work with than construction, so I like it for crafts like this. I'm not too much into origami because it is so, like, origami is exact, right? So some people really like that. I like more of the eclectic art. Okay, so there's what I need for that. I'm going to go ahead and glue it on. Now here's the reason why you might want to let it dry is the glue is, the color's going to blend. But actually it looks really cool, so I'll show you. So since I didn't wait, the glue is actually, you can see that, bringing the color, the paint onto the picture. I'm going to get stuck here. So that's kind of a fun look, right? Kind of blending it. It's going to look even more abstract, even more unique. But you could let it dry if you don't want that impact. Alright, so just using our clear glue right now and gluing down our pieces of paper kind of randomly. Try to cover up the white if you can. It works better, like, to kind of see a spot and make sure it's next to a piece as opposed to leaving too many whites, because then you'll have to layer at the end. But that's, it's all workable. That's what I like to do to save time. And if you do have an edge of your paper, it works well to put the edge against the edge, just like that. Otherwise, you can always overlap a little bit and cut it when it's dry. All right, we are getting there. So if we want to see this representing the times in our life that we share with others that might be a little bit more chaotic, such as facing sicknesses or diagnoses, changing of location, changing of jobs or roles. Sometimes what we plan for our relationships doesn't happen. It can be a little bit more wild and chaotic. But the idea is that love holds us together, and that intention is infused into your artwork as you're creating it with your loved one. You're letting them know, I am here. We're going to get through this. I no longer just create art just because it's pretty. I always infuse a deeper, significant meaning into it. And my son enjoys this too. Because I feel like life has so much meaning. And art is such a beautiful, expressive means for us. Ooh, that one really blended. All right, so you can see this so far. I'm getting a little stuck here with my glue. All right, I've got the paint. I'm going to hold it up. I've got the paint. I've got the paper on. There's lots of different colors, and it's blending. And now, I might want to make sure I get really clear glue for this part. Now, I want to add my pieces around. Oh, that one's empty. And these are kind of big, but that's okay. Let's make that one a little smaller. All right, I might not glue these on right now because my paint is all colored, but I'll show you the idea. All right, so then I have these heart images on. Kind of like when you see that stationery that has little different things throughout it. These are pretty big, but that's so you could see them. You can make them smaller and all intermixed on the edges. And then you're going to keep overlapping and doing your colors and making it exactly as you want until you finish the finished look. So this is a little bit unfinished, so I can keep moving on here. And then in that center, you might be able to fit a really nice 5x7 or 2 photos and a quote like "togetherness is sweet" or "our love endures" or something with the idea that love keeps you together. So that's the idea for this kind of abstract craft. Love holds us together. All right. Woo! We are getting there. I gotta organize a little bit here, and we will move on to the final craft, which I shared in a reel. They got a lot of views on this page. I was really impressed. That was like my first reel ever. We are going to create an acrylic paint pour right here, right in front of you, just on newspaper. So there's not going to be so much acrylic or so much water that it's going to make a huge giant mess. I'm going to do my best not to make a huge mess. And I'm not going to use a blow dryer because that's going to be really loud, and I don't think it's the best way to teach with the blow dryer. So what I'm going to do, you could use a blow dryer for you. I'm going to use a straw because this is something also that your child can learn and do, and Liam likes to do. Blow paint and make a design. Okay? And I call this one just a modified acrylic paint pour. And the idea is giving yourself permission to flow and express. It would be like a celebration craft. Celebrate who you are and how you show up in the world and embracing the fullness of who you are. So I've got some cups and a little bit of water here. I am going to water down my paint so that it moves easier. Let's use something color we haven't used yet. So I'm going to use a green. And we learned that all you have to do with acrylic paint, usually, this one doesn't want to behave, is mix it by shaking. But if that doesn't work, how ironic that this one decides not to work. Use the end of a paintbrush and just mix that paint up. You could also use watercolors for these kind of crafts. They automatically, you know, flow a little easier. All right, so I'll make 2 colors to start with. I'm going to go with a blue and a green just to use something different. This one is actually a shimmery. I have a metallic acrylics as well as matte acrylics. Matte, I didn't say it wrong. I like both of the styles. There's so many different kinds out there. You can also put glitter into your projects, right? Or sponge glitter on afterwards. The idea with abstracts is there's just open possibilities. All right, so what we're gonna do here is, I'm gonna make sure you can see this. I'm gonna just pour the paint and I'm gonna blow it around. And I have some extra baby wipes to clean up if it decides to get too crazy here. So let's see. All right, so when you have your child or yourself, just choose where you want to do it, pour it. Maybe I go across and around. All right. It's gonna make a noise. Okay, you see what how I'm blowing that there? Now you might also want to just pick it up, move it. This has enough to do that. Turn it a different direction. You want to blow too much where you lose some of those little tiny lines. So I'm going to stop at that. I'm going to catch my breath because as you're blowing, you're going to lose a lot of oxygen. So let's add another color to it. Let's add a darker purple. I also had an idea. I didn't want to show it because I didn't have any gloves, but if you wanted to finger paint, or your child wanted to finger paint this kind of thing, just go for it. Nothing wrong with getting your hands a little messy if they can clean up afterwards, and maybe it's the kind of paint that you don't mind. You know, it's the washable paint. Would be better for finger painting. Then you can get all their fun little fingerprints in their artwork. Especially really young kids love the sensory play and the sensory of touching. So I'm going to put a little bit of this red, or darker. It's kind of like a dark maroon, not as purplish as I thought. And you might not want to blow it too much. Like sometimes you might like the way it looks. I want to blow some of it. I got a fun whistling one. And these kind of crafts will need more time to dry since you're using the water. So just be mindful of that as you're moving them. I'm going to actually do some purple next. I'm going to go ahead and use it in the cup that had the red, or this maroon. And so then idea, if you have this as a background, you could put your child's name or your name, the first letter, or your whole name you could print out. It could be a monogram. It could be a gift for someone where you give this to them. Say they're having a new baby and you know the colors of the nursery. You put their name, you make an abstract design, boom, there's your gift. I'd love to see more creative gifts being shared in our world instead of buying things. We can teach our kids how to use their creativity and make almost anything for anyone. Conserve our resources of our land. You get a lot of different blending with this technique. Feel like it needs some more blue. So you kind of go back and forth and you feel, you know, and let your loved one or child decide hey, do you want more blue? Do you want more of this color? How do you want to do it? Almost like a tie-dye of shirts too. And the cool thing is, like, you don't know what you're going to get at the end. That's the fun part of this. And there's nothing wrong. There's no wrong way to ever make a background design. If you do use a blow dryer, you will notice the lower speed creates a different design than the higher speed. So just be mindful of what you're going for, what you're looking for. All right, I'm going to probably, let's see, I've got some awesome design mixing in this one because I put a lot of paint on it. If you can see that. Actually, it looks more like a professional paint pour than the other ones I've created. So based on how much water you use, you might be able to get a look like this. All right. So this is going to dry. Put it somewhere safe for a second. And I do want to show the two completed ones. This was Liam's first ever paint pour we created. I loved it. We definitely learned. And I'm thinking about some kind of quote about beginning and just embracing new beginnings, because that was our first project of doing that. And I'll let him pick out the quote. And then I have a little friend who made this one, and she's going to add the letter A to it, which I have printed out here, and she just hasn't been back to decorate it yet. But she's going to hang it up in her bedroom. And that's her expressive artwork doing this technique. So lots of options, lots of just freedom with abstract. That's the biggest thing I want to impart, is just how free abstract art can be. So let's just recap a little bit of the designs, and then this workshop will be complete. So the very first design I taught was a sponge or brush design. And this is definitely good for people struggling with fine motor challenges, because it's more of a gross motor movement. So definitely neurodivergent individuals work very well with sponge brushes. So you can get lots of them. You can buy them in packages, and then you have lots. So when you're creating your project, you don't have to rinse in between. And there's also different types of little brushes that come with paint kits, so you can get different looks. And don't be afraid to use household items such as Q-tips, because they work just as well and can create that smaller design and look. All right. And when you're creating that sponge or brush design with your child, infuse it with the idea of celebration. You're celebrating who you are, tuning into your own creativity and your own intuitive desires. Where on this page do you want to put something? What colors are calling to you? What mixtures are calling to you? And sometimes our kids will get to that point where they'll go, they feel like they made a mistake. Then you're there to kind of be there and walk them through and say, it's okay. That looks great. You can, shape it or do something else, or it's fine. Encourage them to be open-minded and to not judge their artwork and judge the way it goes. And it's a process. Sometimes they will. They might want to start over. So I would suggest always be willing to let a child start over if they feel like they messed up. You want to give them that freedom. And kitchen sponges also make great little spongers. All right, so that would be the first, the sponge or the brush design. And let me show it to you here. I did some horizontal lines there. And then I did some sponging with a little design that came through. And then just some swirls and blending, because you can just do anything. All right. The second one was a collage, an honor craft that helps you honor the stories and experiences of your past. So it is definitely something maybe more on the adult side versus child when it comes to the thematic material. But it's using the newspaper and two different colors. This one's drying, and I'm going to finish adding spots. We want to cover off all the white and just have it with different the colors and the newspaper all kind of intermixed randomly together. And you're going to overlap at times, and just keep doing it till your heart's content, until you say, this is it. This is how I want it to look. All right? And the idea with that is that we can choose like elements of the earth. I did fire in my first one. I did earth element in this one, to really kind of transmute the energies of our past and close that chapter and move forward, because this life is open and wide before us, and we don't want to be so stuck in the past that we forget to live in the present. All right, the next one was Love Holds Us Together. It's an eclectic collage. We used paint, we used some doodling of hearts, and we used the ripped paper. And the other thing I taught about the ripped paper is that it's a really awesome sensory activity. So rip paper for your own self or for a project. Get out your energy in that way if you need to. So here is that craft. Ooh, and I can see some of it's bleeding through there, which is fine, but something to be mindful of, that we probably want to let it all dry before you add your little doodling around the edges. And then the idea would be in the middle, you would put some pictures, something that would, you're celebrating the connection you have with someone. And everyone is contributing to this because it's a connect craft. So someone might be sponge painting, someone's ripping the paper and adding it, and someone else is doodling and adding them afterwards. But yeah, like I noticed, you do want your paint to dry, most likely, so that your glue does not blend too much with it, and definitely that your doodling pages don't blend. All right, and the last one was the acrylic paint pour. It's a modified version by using just a little bit of water and acrylic paint and using either a straw and a blow dryer. And it just gives permission for your energy to flow and express however it wants. And when you're doing that with your child, that's kind of the energy that you're infusing into them, that you're all right to be just who you are. Like, our children need to hear that, need to know that, need to feel that. And so an art project with them is a way to love them in that capacity. It might sound kind of weird, but it's how you can integrate that idea to them, that they matter and that they're valued just as they are. So you can never hear that too many times. The ones drying over there that we created, but you saw the few examples where the colors just go in all different directions, and it's just up to you when you're done, right? And the more paint you use, the more water you use, and the more blending you'll get, the less you lose, the more little streaks and lines you can get. So it's up to your heart's content or your child's content. And you could also layer this. So say after mine dries, I could go back and put some white little accents going out through it. So always feel free to add layers to your artwork after they dry. You don't have to be done in one setting. That's the cool thing I like too. You can do part of it based on your child's stamina in a setting, and then do the next part in a different setting, and add more. So just give yourself that freedom as you create, just to have fun with it and to make it more about the process and the experience than whatever the finished product looks like, right? We all love to have beautiful things to hang or gift others. And we admire artists who have the fine motor ability to make some realistic images, right? But art's here for all of us. It's a tool for all of us, and especially our neurodivergent loved ones, to regulate, to access expression and creativity, to have fun with loved ones in just ways that are, I would say, more cost effective than a lot of things in our world. Art supplies and panels are much cheaper than vacations and computer gaming systems, and those things can serve their place and their time, just as art does. So I encourage you to try some of these techniques, and please share them with us on this page. We love to celebrate and see all you guys can create. All right, mwah! Sending you so much love.